Major support for these broadcasts is provided by New York Community Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chelsea Lighting, Capital One Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Genova Burns, Giantomasi and Webster, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, the WITKOFF Group, GREENBERG TRAURIG, LLP, M&T Bank. Additional support is provided by Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, C.B. Richard Ellis, Colliers International New York, LLC, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, DDG Partners, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Flushing Bank, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, John Katsimatides, Red Apple Group, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, and these friends.
So here we are in the fall of 2012, and lots of things are happening in New York City, and a lot of things are really happening in Lower Manhattan. So to tell us of what's happening in Lower Manhattan, I've assembled 4 individuals to give their insight on how it is today and what the future looks like in Lower Manhattan. My guests, they include Janno Lieber, who's the president of the World Trade Center Properties Division of Silverstein Properties. Jerry Larkin, who is the senior vice president for leasing for Brookfield Office Properties. Mike Murray, who is the COO, Chief Operating Officer of HHM. And last but not least, who's normally here for restaurant shows, but today we brought him out of retirement.
Branching out.
Okay, my good friend Drew Nieporent, who is the principal of Myriad Restaurants. You know, in a way, you have a different category than that. I think you've been in Lower Manhattan longer than most of the people sitting over here. Maybe the second guy who would be Janno. So how do you see the transformation of Lower Manhattan over the last couple of years? And unfortunately, you were there also on 9/11. So.
Well, certainly the rents have spiked. No.
Oh, sure. Yeah, put him with some landlords.
Not enough.
And then he complains. Yeah.
Well, I think having grown up in New York City and wanting to open my own business, I might have, in the 80s, when I opened my first restaurant, 1985 Montrachet, I might have wanted to be on Park Avenue, but I couldn't afford the rent. So I found a space in Tribeca. I think my rent was $12 a square foot. And I'm still there 27 years later. So that's, you know, my MO and my, the way I conducted my business was to try to find rent that I could afford and drive the bees to the honey versus paying top dollar rent in the Midtown location. What's happened in Lower Manhattan is, I guess, people caught up to my way of thinking. That ugly word gentrification took place in certain ways. Tremendous building. Obviously the Battery Park City complex, tremendous. And Wall Street, also as a residential area, has seen a great growth as well.
I mean, if we talk about Battery Park City, which I think is one of the finest developments, the next one will be when you finish yours, plus your present building is 7 World, Greenwich Street. I think look what Brookfield has. I mean, how much office space do you have, and how much you have a major potential retail? What, $250 million of redevelopment over there, Jerry?
That's correct. We have 8 million square feet of office space, and we're about to undergo a $250 million renovation of our retail area, which is about 200,000 feet. The real genesis for it is, in the last 10 years, the population downtown has doubled. It's gone from 29,000 people to 60,000 people. So, I've been downtown since '97, and it's a whole different place. There's more people, there's families, there's people walking their dogs, there's excitement at nighttime. There's a feeling of a 24-hour community. And with that, we need the retail. Downtown has always been one of the largest central business districts in the United States, but it's always historically been under-retailed.
Now, it's interesting when you talk about retail. It is under-retailed downtown, but you do have the highest grossing per square foot retailer in the world, being Century 21, who's been on downtown for a period of time, and the other stores. But Battery Park City is like an enclave. It's a place that I took my wife there once a couple years ago. She says, I never knew this existed. It's a different world. And I mean, no one would have ever thought of it, especially when Lefrak built his building originally, which was a Section 8 building. It was a different world today. Will the people who are spending time in Michael's hotels, or people who are in, further down on the other side near the seaport, do you think they'll be shopping at the retail in Battery Park City?
Absolutely, and I think the main reason is going to be the fact that you're going to have in 2 years the completion of all the transit, and downtown will be the most accessible business district in Manhattan. All the train lines go through it. You have ferries, dropping people off at the base of Battery Park City, and again, you have a large resident population, and it's all new when it's done in the next 2 years. All the retail will be. You're going to have probably 500,000 to 750,000 feet at the World Trade Center, and our 200,000 feet, you'll have a critical mass that will attract people.
Janno, you've been there. You've been working on this project and other projects down in Lower Manhattan. How do you see the development? How do you see new tenants going there? I mean, the big thing is Condé Nast going down there. Other, the 4 New York Plaza did with American Media and other companies. Where do you see, and who's coming to the Lower Manhattan?
Well, it's very exciting, actually, for all the reasons that Jerry was talking about and Drew mentioned, is that downtown's become exciting not just because it's less expensive, but because it is more desirable in many ways to many people. It's more desirable to the creative workers, whether they're in actual technology businesses or creative arts industries or nonprofits or law or finance, who increasingly live in Brooklyn, Lower Manhattan, and New Jersey, which are the growth areas for our city and its environs, as opposed to
New Jersey for you. I mean, we do shows on New Jersey, but we're talking.
But that's where the white collar workforce is growing. Is young people who want to live close to Lower Manhattan. It's got a hipper vibe. It's very desirable, and the growth of Brooklyn is part of that story. The growth of Lower Manhattan as a residential community. So the businesses who are picking up on this are moving to Lower Manhattan quite significantly. We filled up 7 World Trade Center, the first building to open at the World Trade Center after 9/11. And it's been open 6 years now, and it's full, it's fully leased, and it's full of companies that do publishing, like Mansueto. It's full of world-class law firms like Wilmer Hale, which was the last large tenant to move in, and companies like Omnicom, which is a major international branding and advertising outfit. So the creative workforce is moving downtown, and the interesting thing is it's mixing in with the old financial services companies that are the mainstay of downtown's economy. So it's creating a more exciting business district together with this live and play and tourism that's centered in part around the 9/11 memorial, which has attracted almost 5 million people in just a year. So it's a very exciting new community in its own right.
You bring up tourism, and Mike's company has been down there. How many years now?
We came in post 9/11, about 2004, 2005, with our first project down at the seaport.
And how have you seen the increase in revenue and occupancy over the
The
past.
beautiful thing is that the earlier question about Battery Park, whether or not they'll travel to retail, when I think it's 60,000 residents, I just think of guests of those 60,000 residents, and they're going to be close by but not necessarily staying in those homes. And that traffic that it creates all around, in the diversity of the economy that's been created that used to be totally financial services and is now going to have a corporate component. It's going to have a retail component, it has a residential component, it has a tourism component with 9/11 Memorial and all the things associated with that. Creates this buzz and activity literally 7 nights a week that we love to be around, and we love to be able to promote within our smaller hotels. We've picked smaller hotels to be involved in, mostly because we like to be involved as neighbors to a neighborhood and curate that neighborhood and help customers get to learn something they wouldn't otherwise learn about New York. And so it's fit beautifully with our plan. We'll have 4 projects down there, and we'll look to do some more. And we're just up the road with 2 more in Tribeca and another one in Greenwich Village. So, and we feel like all these different neighborhoods are kind of the second, third, and fourth trips to New York.
Tribeca, you know, because that's where, you know, everybody knows Drew's place in Tribeca,
Sure.
you know, and you know, Nobu and the Tribeca Grill is really downtown. I even though, you know, it's not lower Manhattan, but it's downtown Manhattan. It's all part of that community. And, you know, you've had how many restaurants in that market over the years?
Well, I've opened 35 restaurants in 27 years, not all in Tribeca.
No, but
currently I have 6, just sold 1.
But
so I have 5 ongoing.
Now, how do you
Tribeca.
see the business today in Tribeca? I mean, because, you know, it's great for the World Financial Center, it's great for the Trade Center. I mean, people just walk there. People want to be in Tribeca. Tribeca housing, I mean, you talk about your hotels. I know about, it's one of the highest price per square foot residential condominiums and also for rental over there in Tribeca.
I think what's fun for me is when I see people come out of the subways in Tribeca and they have the map in their hands, the tourists, and there's really no shopping. There's shopping in Soho. They'll be shopping where you guys are going to open up, but there's no shopping. It's really a restaurant destination, most of it, and the cast iron architecture and just the fact that it's not overrun. It's just it's a marvelous neighborhood. It's a great part of New York. But it's changed because New York is like, there's a trendiness about restaurants, certainly. So the neighborhoods like the meat market, which they were desolate. There was nobody in the meat market. So after Tribeca, it became the meat market. Then it was the Lower East Side. Today it's really Brooklyn. It's going to be Queens in a couple of weeks. Who knows? I mean, and hopefully what you're trying to do now, you're going to create more interest down there. We hold our own. I mean, I'm down there for over 27 years. And Tribeca Grill and Nobu and even Cortone. You know, we do fine. We do fine. But it is a destination.
Now, here's the question, and you know, I'm talking about the good stuff, and this is something that I always bring up in my shows and my seminars. You have Class A property. You have even the older buildings that Silverstein Properties owns are really B+ Class A type of properties. What's happening to the B and C properties where people, these are, you know, in the 90s, we were able to come up with the Giuliani administration with the 421Gs, which gave you the tax incentives to change the conversion as you were bringing up the Wall Street housing. I mean, all these office buildings, these apartment houses were office buildings, but the landlords got great deals and they converted that. Who's going to move into these older buildings when they have the great opportunity to be in your building and your building?
I think the point that you make is a good one, but actually, since 9/11, 15 million square feet of older, antiquated office buildings have been converted to residential. That has helped to the growth, the doubling of the residential population downtown.
But we still have other buildings.
There are some, but to a great extent, it is becoming more and more a Class A market. And the other thing that's happening is that those smaller spaces are attracting a unique demographic. They're attracting nonprofits. It's not just the old customs brokers who connected to the waterfront or to the financial industry. They're attracting nonprofits and people and companies that are really motivated by price, that want to be downtown near the big boys, but can afford a slightly lower product. So it's actually, it seems to be working well. in a symbiotic way. I don't know what you think, Jerry.
I would agree with that. I would say that at this time, though, there's probably more of a flight to quality because, rents are not spiking. And probably over the next year or two, you'll start seeing them fill up with people that can't afford to be in the totally top buildings.
Here's a big question, I mean, Drew's restaurant, you go to his restaurants here or you go anywhere else, the prices are the same. What's the differential in rents for properties in your Battery Park City, World Financial Center, the Trade Center over there, and Midtown Manhattan today?
On the retail level, to be honest with you, I'm not sure.
I'm
Not
talking
my
about
on
the office.
level, I would say
this was really geared to the office.
For the office rents, you're going to see downtown. I'll give you an example. Is we're doing deals in our Midtown building, Grace, in the high 90s, and you can come downtown to the financial center, and the average in the mid 50s to low 60s. So there is a significant discount.
And in the case of the World Trade Center, it's really a unique situation. There's in Manhattan, you can't build a new office building and finance it economically without getting the kinds of rents Jerry was talking about, in Midtown rents north of $100 a foot.
Fortunately, have Liberty bonds.
But we in Lower Manhattan, because of the history of 9/11, what took place, have insurance, a certain amount of insurance, and a certain amount of tax-free financing. So that enables us to offer brand new, green, high-tech office space, state-of-the-art stuff, to great companies at probably 30% discount over what you could get even an older, a comparable situation if it were built under normal economics in Midtown. It's comparable to much older buildings in Midtown in terms of pricing. So there is a significant pricing advantage, even though it's state-of-the-art product.
And for us, from a basis perspective, the owners of the assets that we run in Lower Manhattan, they're in at lower basis because of the time that they came in between 04 and 08 to purchase that piece of real estate. And they have a significant advantage versus our Midtown hotels that we also own. But our room rates, which would be our version of rents, are probably within 5 to 8% now. And Lower Manhattan is probably our largest growth neighborhood in all of Manhattan.
Now, you also do asset management for the W, right?
We have some involvement with that with Joe's group, yeah.
Right. Now, that is, that's different than the standard hotels that you operate because you have mostly limited service over there.
That's correct. How
do you see and it really will relate to what you're planning, how do you see the 4-star or the potential 5-star hotels doing in Lower Manhattan?
I think as long as they keep the size to a minimum, once you get up around 400 or 500 keys, you lose the ability to really have a story or be intimate with a customer at a 5-star level and really give them the services that they need. Where Joe did it right, at least on the W, was that's a key count of about 200 rooms that allows him to do all the right things from a story perspective, keep a vibe going, the right kind of buzz. He did the right thing at retail with the food and beverage with BLT. So for him, at the end of the day, it's about creating that traffic in that hotel to help him at the end of the day sell residential, right? So.
And you with your hotel?
Yeah, in addition to our little project at the World Trade Center.
I mean, this baby project.
Yeah. Silverstein is developing a couple blocks away a Four Seasons hotel that'll have condos on top, and that's a project that's fully designed, foundations are in, and we expect to resume construction this year or early next. It'll be in addition to the fact that it's going to serve a lot of people who, as you say, want to come to Lower Manhattan because it's just a fun place to visit and see as tourists or to visit your friends and relatives. It's going to be a great amenity for the business community. To have a Four Seasons in Lower Manhattan is a stamp of the caliber of that downtown business district. I think it's going to make a big difference for everybody.
How do you see a Four Seasons? I mean, because we've never really seen a 5-star hotel in Lower Manhattan. I mean, even when the Marriott was there, even with the Ritz-Carlton in Battery Park City, those aren't true 5 stars. You as
the emphasis, even in the restaurant business, is away from fine dining. So when you might be, it might be a little scary for some people to hear 5-star hotel because the marketing's been to the young, the cool, the hip. Yeah. Even Andaz, which is a sub-brand, I guess, of Hyatt, is down on Wall Street. But Four Seasons is such a strong, iconic brand, so And if they build it nicely, I think people are gonna. They have a loyal following. Then people will come for sure.
No, I don't think there is a question. I think there is, I recently wrote an article about all the rooms, but the limited number of five-star hotels being built into the city. I mean, you know, you have now which they consider maybe a 4.5-star in Battery Park City, which is not owned by you, you know, with the Goldman Sachs,
Conrad.
the Conrad Hotel, which they took you know, an Embassy Suites and made it over there. But that's more of their corporate campus, you know, and it may be used for other people, but in general, they're utilizing a lot. What do you see with regard to the type of retailers that you think are going to be moving into the old, you know, the Winter Garden or what, you know, what you had over there?
We've got a lot of excitement with the luxury brands, and we're going to have a mix of sort of a luxury and a cool to have that kind of factor where people, you know, of all types of shopping needs will come in. We realize that we're not going to be able to compete with the big name national retailers that with Westfield over at the Trade Center, just because of the sheer number of people coming through there. But, you know, for us, the retail is very important, but it has to complement the office space. You know, we're an office, you know, landlord first.
Here's an interesting question for all of you. I mean, you know, Nordstrom's, which is is the highest rated retailer, people want it for a higher category, finally is taking a site on 57th Street, you know, in Axtel's property. At one time, you know, you had Barney's, you know, one time we even had Alexander's, that your type of age, you're much older than us. You know, I just wanted to bring it up.
I shopped there.
No, just the time. Could you foresee, you know, somewhere, I'm not talking your property, or I'm just taking in general in Lower Manhattan, the capability of maybe a Nordstrom's or maybe even a small Macy's, you know, and today they've done in Chicago, they opened up recently an urban Target, you know, which is the smaller type of Target. Can you see those type of things happening, Janno? I mean, from
well,
I
mean, with respect to Nordstrom's, obviously they did a blowout deal in Midtown, and they're very committed to getting into the New York market in a serious way.
There's two different shoppings, you know. New York City can afford both of those.
And and I understand that they are. I mean, they are seriously eyeballing downtown, and I think they're serious about it. Where it ends up, we shall see. But I think that they're serious about it. It's going to be great there are a couple of locations, I mean, around Lower Manhattan that do have that opportunity to host a major retail. In addition, on the Trade Center site, there are a couple of retail blocks of substantial size that could, in fact, host a mini anchor or an anchor in the way you described. So that'll be the decision of Westfield, together with the Port Authority, who owns the retail at the Trade Center. But I think that could happen.
Or even, I mean, there are sites, you know, that were acquired over the last couple of years. I believe Alan Freed with Michael Steinhardt bought the site from the stock exchange over there, that you could build a Nordstrom's over there and so on. Now, what I think is really interesting, which will help everybody over here, is what they're doing on the top floors of the Woolworth building, where they're building luxury condominiums. You know, Steve WITKOFF was on my show a couple weeks ago. He sold the property to Alchemy and, you know, a private equity fund. And what Rose Associates and another partner is doing at the former AIG, where they're planning this very luxury residential. And, you know, just look at Ratner's at Beekman, the Frank Gehry building. They're getting rents that we never expected over there. You know, the market's over there and changing. In the food business, what do you see? I mean, you know, there's been a trend of changes in different things, like you said, the meatpacking district. What kind of restaurants would you see, or your contemporaries, because you know, like you're the king, everybody knows Drew Nieporent. What are your friends looking for in Lower Manhattan? Are we seeing, you think, any more steakhouses? Because I was at Capitol Grill a couple of months ago. They're packed at night. You know, they're doing great. They're hurting on the weekends, but at night they're doing well. Could you see a Palm? Could you see others? Or are we going to get the chic Shishis, or what do you?
No, I actually think the pendulum has swung from, I think people want what they want now. I don't think they necessarily want what creative restaurateurs tell them that they want. So they're more comfortable, especially visitors. Certainly they want something authentically New York. So when you think of big name brands or chains, but there are certain steakhouses, like the Palm located itself in
The
Chambers
one in
Street.
Chambers Street is doing very
Yeah,
well.
when I saw that, I said, wow, that's just such a mistake, and yet they're doing great. They seem to be doing great. So I think it's a big fishbowl, and I think there's a lot of room for a lot of people. The only thing it hurts, though, sometimes are areas like Tribeca, because as I said earlier, you really have to make a concerted effort to go to a restaurant in Tribeca.
But
I mean,
people want, you know what?
it's not like they're going to be
People
in the
want to be.
building.
Tribeca has a buzz, you know. It's like you were saying before. Somebody gets off the subway, and they have the map, and they heard of Tribeca, or they've heard of the Meatpacking District. And look at, to have 5 million visitors to the memorial in less than a year. I mean, this is enormous to see this. I mean,
Yeah, but I come out of the path and walk to my restaurants, and usually you see the people around the memorial area. They're not quite sure where to go or what to do. I think the fact that there is going to be this growth it will create what you had described earlier, where people can access it in a much more convenient way once the construction is finally complete. And because even I visited the memorial just one time, and it's a little bit of an exercise to get in.
When is a lot of this going to be ready? You know?
Well, what Drew's talking about is really going to happen probably in the next year or at most year and a half, because when we open for World Trade Center,
which is what's the expected date?
That's going to be almost exactly a year from now, maybe a couple months more, in the fall of 2013, and Greenwich Street becomes open to go through the site, north to south. And you can walk on to the Memorial Plaza from the north as well as the south. That's going to really open up people to experience Tribeca, the area to the north, and the financial district, and the areas to the south, and Battery Park City, because it's all of those 5 million people. They go to the Memorial and they go to Century 21 right now, but they don't necessarily go to all those neighborhoods. Now it's going to be much more spread out, and it'll benefit everybody. Right now, if you work in 7 World Trade and there's almost 2 million square feet of office space filled with people who do, they eat in Tribeca. They walk out the door, they walk up to Tribeca Grill or some of your neighbors up there, and there's going to be more and more of that as the Trade Center is built out, as Brookfield.
When is the expected date of the subway center, the Cavatrata?
The Path Hub. There are 2 brand new world-class transit facilities in Lower Manhattan. At the World Trade Center, there's a so-called Path Hub, that great design by Santiago Calatrava, and that's going to open at the end of 2014 or early 2015. But also at Fulton Street, for all of us who use the Fulton Street Transit Center, which was a rabbit warren of very antiquated stairways and ramps and so on, that brand new beautiful glass and steel station is also going to open in 2014.
Now, within that, is that where the MTA is looking for some management company to take care of the retail?
Yes, they have retail on a couple different levels, and they're on the street, or will be soon, with an RFP for a retail operator.
Which relates to, I wish I had time, but when I do a retail show about vertical retailing around the city in general. But I think that the 4 of you have really given me and my audience a very good perspective on what's happening in Lower Manhattan, and I'd like to thank all of you. I'd like to thank Janno Lieber, Jerry Larkin, Mike Murray, and of course Drew Nieporent, and I'll see you next week.